You know that moment when everything suddenly clicks into place, and the truth you've been avoiding smacks you like a freight train? Yeah, I had one of those recently. But let me backtrack a bit. Last Friday was supposed to be just another night. Emily and I had argued earlier in the week about something stupid, but we'd patched it up, or so I thought. Then, out of nowhere, Emily, the woman who usually couldn't stand the idea of going out without me, casually tells me she's going to a party. A party I'd specifically told her I wasn't okay with. Now, I'm not the controlling type. We've always had this understanding: if something doesn't sit right with either of us, we talk about it. But this time was different. She stood there in the kitchen, looking straight through me as she said it. "I'm going whether you like it or not," she said, already holding her car keys, as if my opinion was just background noise. It wasn't a question, and it definitely wasn't a request. That's when the first flicker of doubt sparked. I told myself it was nothing, that I was overthinking it. Maybe she just needed space. But then I saw the dress. Let me paint you a picture: tight, black, far too short, paired with heels I hadn't seen in years. The kind of outfit you wear to turn heads, not just any heads. I knew this wasn't about catching up with her wild friend Laura and her party crowd. No, this was something else entirely. I didn't say a word. Emily took one last glance in the mirror and smiled, a cold, distant smile that didn't reach her eyes. She didn't even kiss me goodbye. Just a quick "don't wait up," and then she was gone. The rest of the evening, I spent it pacing the house like some idiot, something gnawing at me that I couldn't shake off. A deep pit settled in my stomach, but I refused to call her or text. If she wanted to act like that, I wasn't going to be the one chasing after her. By midnight, I was going over every conversation we'd had in the past few weeks, replaying the small, seemingly insignificant moments. Was she distant lately? Yeah, maybe. A little less affectionate? Sure. But what really started bothering me was that every time I'd asked where she was, her stories were just a little too clean, too rehearsed. Something wasn't adding up. I grabbed my phone and stared at the screen, my thumb hovering over her contact. It was 1:30 a.m., and there were no texts, no updates, just silence. That's when I did something I'd promised myself I'd never do. I opened our shared phone plan and started looking through the call logs. I knew I was crossing a line, invading her privacy, but I couldn't stop myself. It only took a few clicks, and there it was, plain as day. Dozens of calls and texts to a number I didn't recognize. They started about a month ago and got more frequent by the day. And they weren't just during work hours. Some of them were sent late at night, long after I thought she was asleep next to me. I felt sick. My heart was pounding so hard I could barely think. Maybe it was nothing, I told myself. Maybe it was some work thing, or a friend. But deep down, I knew. You know that gut feeling, the one that knows the truth no matter how much you try to convince yourself otherwise? That was me, sitting in the dark, staring at evidence I hadn't even wanted to find. I didn't sleep that night. I just sat there, waiting, for what, I didn't know. By the time the sun started creeping through the blinds, I still hadn't gotten a single text from Emily. No apology for staying out late, no excuse about losing track of time. Nothing. I must have checked my phone 100 times, hoping for some kind of explanation. But there was nothing. Then, at 7:30 a.m., I heard the sound of heels clicking against the front steps. I hadn't even realized I'd fallen asleep on the couch until I jolted awake at the noise. The front door creaked open, and there she was, Emily, hair slightly messy, makeup smudged, smelling like a mix of alcohol and perfume. She stood there, framed by the doorway, acting like everything was normal. Like she wasn't about to blow up our entire life. She gave me this lazy smile. "Good morning," she said, like she hadn't just stayed out all night without a single word. She didn't even look sorry. She just walked past me like I was invisible, like her actions didn't matter. I stood up, my voice coming out harsher than I meant it to, but I didn't care anymore. Where the hell were you? Emily stopped, turned slowly, and met my eyes. But instead of defensive excuses or a half-hearted apology, she laughed. She actually laughed. Are we really doing this now? It's too early for your drama. Drama. That's the word she chose. I could feel my hands shaking, not out of fear, but sheer frustration. I stayed up all night waiting for you. No texts, no calls, and now you're standing here like nothing's wrong. Don't act like I'm the one being unreasonable. She rolled her eyes. I told you I was going to a party. I didn't think I needed to give you a minute-by-minute update. We're not teenagers. But it wasn't just the party. It wasn't even about staying out all night. It was the complete lack of respect in her voice, the way she was looking at me like I was just some nuisance in her life. I couldn't keep it in anymore. Who's the guy? The words came out sharp, cold. I hadn't planned on saying it, but once they were out there, I couldn't take them back. Emily's face froze for a second, just a flicker of something behind her eyes, but she quickly covered it up with a smirk. What are you talking about? She asked, crossing her arms, her voice dripping with mockery. There's no guy. You're paranoid. I wasn't buying it. Don't lie to me, Jess, I said, my voice calm but firm. I saw the calls, the texts. You've been talking to someone, and it sure as hell wasn't about work. Her expression shifted again, from smug to defensive, but she didn't deny it. She just stood there, glaring at me like I was the one who had crossed a line. So what if I have? She snapped, her voice sharp. You've been suffocating me for months. I needed space. I needed someone who doesn't make me feel trapped. That hit like a punch to the gut. Suffocating her. Trapping her. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. For months, I'd been trying to figure out why things felt off between us, bending over backward to fix whatever was wrong. And here she was, blaming me for the distance she had created. Trapped? I repeated, my voice rising with disbelief. I've done nothing but try to make this work. You're the one who's been pulling away, hiding things, sneaking around. And now you want to make it my fault. She rolled her eyes again, like she was bored of the whole conversation. You're being dramatic. We've had problems, sure, but that doesn't mean I've been sneaking around. The way she said it, like she was brushing off the accusation, only made my anger boil over. Don't lie to me, Emily. I shouted, my voice echoing through the house. Just admit it. You've been seeing someone behind my back, haven't you? She didn't answer right away. For the first time, I saw a flash of guilt cross her face, but it was gone as quickly as it came. Instead of owning up to it, she went on the attack. You're not perfect either, you know, she said, her voice low, almost venomous. You're always busy with work, always distracted. You barely even notice me anymore unless it's to complain about something. Maybe if you'd paid more attention to me, I wouldn't have needed to find someone else. There it was. The confession, wrapped in blame. She was admitting it but twisting it, trying to make it seem like it was somehow my fault. I couldn't believe it. I felt the room spin for a moment, the weight of her words pressing down on me. So that's your excuse? I asked quietly, my voice filled with a mix of anger and disbelief. You cheat, and it's my fault because I didn't give you enough attention. Is that what you're saying? She shrugged, her face cold, detached. I'm saying we both know this marriage hasn't been working for a long time. You just didn't want to admit it. I stared at her, the woman I had loved, the woman I had trusted, and I didn't recognize her anymore. She wasn't even trying to fix it. She wasn't sorry. She wasn't remorseful. She had already checked out, and now she was just waiting for me to do the same. For a moment, I considered shouting, fighting, saying something that would shake her out of this twisted logic she'd created to justify what she had done. But then, standing there, I realized something: it wasn't worth it. She wasn't worth it. Not anymore. I let out a long breath, the anger slowly giving way to a cold, empty numbness. You know what, Emily? You're right. This marriage hasn't been working. But that's because you gave up. You chose to cheat instead of working on it. And I'm done. She blinked, surprised by my sudden calmness. What do you mean, done? I'm done with this, I said, my voice steady. With the lies, the games, with trying to fix something you've already broken. You can have your space, your freedom, whatever you want. But I'm out. Her mouth opened, but no words came out. She didn't expect that. Maybe she thought I'd fight for her, beg her to stay, try to fix things like I had so many times before. But that was the thing about betrayal: it changes you. Once the trust is gone, once the love is tainted, there's no going back. I walked past her, heading toward the bedroom, not even looking at her as I spoke. I'll pack my things. You can have the house. I don't care anymore. She stood there in stunned silence, watching me go. I didn't care what she was thinking or feeling at that moment. Maybe she was regretting her choices, or maybe she was relieved that she had finally pushed me far enough to let go. Either way, it didn't matter. I was done. I walked into the bedroom, grabbed a suitcase, and started packing. The numbness inside me was growing by the second, overtaking any remaining anger or sadness. I couldn't even process the fact that my marriage was crumbling around me. It was all too surreal. Every shirt, every pair of jeans I tossed into that suitcase felt like I was closing a chapter one wasn't ready to end, but at the same time, I knew there was no other choice. As I packed, I could hear Emily in the living room, pacing back and forth. I wondered if she was finally realizing what she'd done, if she regretted it now that it was too late. But part of me knew she wouldn't. She wasn't the kind of person to feel regret, not for something like this. The truth was, she had made her decision long before tonight. She had chosen someone else. She had chosen lies over honesty, and I had spent far too long trying to hold on to something that had already slipped through my fingers. After I zipped up the suitcase, I glanced around the room one last time. Our room. The place where we had shared so many moments, good and bad. It felt empty now, lifeless. A place that once held memories of love and intimacy now just felt like a hollow shell of what used to be. I didn't linger. I didn't want to stand there and wallow in the sadness of it all. I picked up my bag, slung it over my shoulder, and walked out of the bedroom. Emily was sitting on the couch, her arms crossed, staring blankly at the floor. When she heard me coming, she looked up, her eyes tired, her face pale. "So, that's it?" she asked, her voice quieter than before. There was no more anger, no more defensiveness, just a hollow question, like she couldn't quite believe it was happening. I stopped by the door, gripping the handle. "Yeah, that's it," I said, not looking at her. "You made your choice, Jess. Now I'm making mine." She didn't say anything, didn't try to stop me. I could hear her breathing unevenly, like she wanted to speak but couldn't find the words. Maybe she realized how far gone we were, that there was no saving this. Or maybe she was just too tired to fight anymore. Either way, I wasn't waiting around to find out. I opened the door and stepped out into the cool night air. The silence outside was almost peaceful, a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just left behind. I stood there for a second, taking a deep breath, trying to figure out what to do next. But I had no plan. No destination. Just me, a suitcase, and the knowledge that my life had just taken a turn I hadn't seen coming. As I walked down the driveway, I felt lighter, strangely enough. Not happy, not relieved, but lighter. Like a weight I'd been carrying for far too long had finally been lifted off my shoulders. I wasn't sad about leaving Emily anymore, not the way I thought I'd be. It was more like acceptance. The realization that I deserved better than this. I threw my suitcase in the back seat and got into the car. I sat there for a moment, staring at the house, the place where we had shared our life together, the place that now felt like a stranger's. But I didn't feel the need to go back. I didn't feel the need to fix things anymore. I started the car and drove off into the night, the road stretching out in front of me, open and uncertain. I had no idea where I was headed or what was next for me, but for the first time in a long time, I felt like I could breathe again. There was no more pretending, no more waiting for things to get better. I had made my choice, and I knew I'd be okay. As I drove away, leaving the past behind me, I realized that sometimes, letting go isn't the hard part. It's holding on for too long that breaks you.